When it comes to Maya modeling tools, there are dozens of them. Unfortunately, some of them don't get the praise or recognition that they truly deserve. They are shoved away in hard-to-reach menus, accessible only by unlisted hotkeys, or not really discussed or talked about as much. I think about tools like the extrude and the bevel tool, like the LeBron James and the Tom Brady's of the Maya modeling world. Much discussed, great at what they do, and easily recognized. But in certain situations, you gotta call a timeout, go deep in your bench, and get another playmaker. These are 11 hidden Maya modeling tools that you probably never heard of in the video coming up. What's going on, you 3D modeling beasts? This is jlmussi. And today we're talking about hidden Maya modeling tools. Now I have a small disclaimer, and you gotta love disclaimers, right? But I'm not saying that these tools are completely hidden. Obviously I found them, other artists do use them. But just my general consensus, I don't see them talked about as much. I don't see them in forums. I don't see them on tutorials. Anytime that I've shown these to other Maya artists, the general response is like, hey, that's a pretty cool tool. Thanks for sharing, I didn't know about it. So that's my experience with these tools. I've been working in Maya for a very long time. I don't want to say the years because that might reveal how truly old I am. So I use these tools on a daily basis, and I'm going to name the tool, and I'm actually going to show you how I incorporate it into my own workflow. And if you're new around here, I do plenty of Maya 3D modeling tutorials like the one you're about to watch. So please consider subscribing for more updates and more content like this. So without further ado, let's get on to the video. The first tool that I want to talk about is the Detach tool. This tool becomes extremely handy when we want to remove hard to reach pieces of geometry from a mesh. And we can take advantage of our edge flow instead of doing complicated and time-consuming selections. So this is exactly what I mean. So I'm going to go here, and how you enable the Detach tool, you have really two ways. So you can go ahead and take a component here, for example, and I can shift and right click, and I can go to Detach. You could also go to Edit Mesh, and you see that I have a hotkey, but you can go here to Detach as well, right? So I'm going to go ahead and detach these two edges here. And you see that we get this thicker blue outline, which means that we have a border edge. To enable border edges, what you have to do is go into Preferences. So we'll go to Windows, Settings, Preferences, and Preferences. And under Polygons, you see that you have this border edge option, and obviously you can play with the width. I like to keep it around 2 or 3, but it's up to you whatever width you have selected. Go ahead and save that out. You might have to reopen your scene, and that's how you will see your thicker border edges, right? So here, if we go ahead and select the vert, we see that these edges are no longer attached. So how does this actually benefit us? Well, let's just say that for some reason we wanted to delete that mouth cavity. I know I've been there plenty of times where I want to remodel, or maybe I'm doing 3D printing and that mouth cavity causes an issue and I have to take it out. So instead of doing complicated selections or isolations or anything like that, what I could do is just take advantage of my edge flow. So I'll go in here and I'll go ahead and double click, and you see if we go in wireframe that we have a nice edge flow selected. I'm going to go ahead and shift and right click, go to Detach, and now we see that we have a thicker border edge. So from here, I can select any of those faces inside the mouth cavity, and I can go ahead and peel that away. So there is our mouth cavity. We can go in there, rebuild it. We can go in here and delete it. We can separate the components, and now we'll have two different meshes. Another example would be maybe this ear, and I've done this quite a bit, this same workflow for this character, when I basically modeled it in symmetry, but then I had to go back in here and extract this one and remodel this ear and attach it back, right? So for example, here for the ear, how I detached it was I came in here and I used these edge loops that I had, And it helps if you go into a wireframe mode sometimes to kind of see where your selection is. And this is just like a UV seam, meaning like you have to get every single edge. If not, that selection, when you want to go ahead and double click it, it'll go ahead and bleed over. So it's following that edge there. And I'm just shift and right clicking and adding to that selection. Let's make sure that we get all these guys here. So I'll get this one here. Here, and I think we should be good. So I'll go ahead and detach that via my hotkey. I'll pull back, double click, and there is the ear. I can go ahead, move it out, separate the mesh, and do what I have to do. So the next little known tool is the converting selections. Converting selections is really, really useful. So for example, this is a popular workflow where you model the head and then the ears separately, and then you wish to attach them. Well, in order to attach these, what you usually do is place them together, and then once those verts are together, you go ahead and drag marquee each single one, and then you do the merge verts command, and you have pretty much a unified surface. But this can be a little bit time consuming, and this is the way that I basically attach components now, where I actually use the edge loops and then convert those over to vertices, where then I perform my merge. This is what I mean. So first we'll go ahead and align this ear to the head. So I'll take this here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and first double click this right here, get my move tool. I'll hit D on my keyboard, V to vert snap here. So usually from this point, what you would do is you go in here and you kind of like shift click these verts together. And not only is this time consuming, but it can get a little dangerous. Like I already know that just where this manipulator is, that I have verts on the backside selected. And you don't know how many times I've done this type of workflow, and then I do my merge, and then maybe an hour later, I get all this pinching in my model because my selections weren't clean. So now I'd have to basically do the whole selection and then go through my model and make sure that all the other verts on the back end are deselected. So there's actually a way easier way to do it with the convert selection method. So now what I'll do is I'll go in here, and I'll just go, and I need to move one vert very slightly. And then now I'll go ahead and take this edge loop here, and then I'll go to select. And we want to go ahead and convert. So convert selection. You see that I already have this hotkey. I use this quite a bit, but we'll go ahead and go to vertices. Now this is a vertice selection. And now we can go to edit mesh, and we'll go down here to merge. And there it is. And if we go ahead and smooth this mesh out, you see that all our verts are now merged. So you see that converting edges to vertices makes something like this a breeze. And converting selections has a bunch of useful applications for it. If you love the G tool, which is your redo last tool command in Maya, you're gonna love this one. So this is the equivalent, but just for any menu option that you do within Maya. And you enable this by middle mouse clicking. And if you watch any of my videos before, I talk about this tool a lot, but it deserves to be on this list. So for example, I'm gonna go in here, and a lot of times I'm toggling between wireframe unshaded, I'm toggling between X-ray mode, I'm toggling between a bunch of settings that it's really just a pain to go and actually redo. So the great thing about this is that it works for visibility settings, but it also works for tool settings as well. So for example, maybe I want to toggle this wireframe unshaded, right? So I turned it off, and for me to enable it again, I would have to go back in here, go into shading, find it, and then click it. But with this shortcut, all you have to do is go into shading, middle mouse click, and it'll redo that last command. Next on the list is collapse components. And this comes really useful when you want to go ahead and pinch things together. And I find myself using this a lot when working with cylinders. So for example, if I come in here and I'm going to go ahead and isolate this piece. So you see that this is pretty much open here. But if I wanted a watertight mesh, maybe I need to 3D print this, or I just need to close this off. This tool becomes really handy and really quick. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go and take these edges and I'll go ahead and extrude them. And instead of playing with the thickness and then having to convert and merge together, all I have to do is once this is extruded and I have edges sitting on top of each other, what I can do is shift and right click, and then we can go merge collapse, and we can do merge edges to center. And now we have a nice quick cylindrical cap that was quickly created. So the next tool is the select similar. And anytime that you have multiple components, especially if they're joined to a mesh, but they're actually very similar, you could take advantage of this tool, and it makes selecting components that are very similar a huge time saver, especially if you have multiples of them. So this is what I mean. So I'm going to go in here, and for this boot, let's just say that I wanted to select these rings right here, right? So what you could do is select each of these by hand, but that would take a very long time. So what we could do is just go in here. I'm just going to go ahead and select this loop here, and I'm going to go ahead and grow the selection. And maybe I wanted to delete them. So I would have to do this over and over for all the rings within this boot. But if I wanted to save a lot of time, I could go to select and select similar. And there we go. So basically what Maya does is that it's going to take a look at the faces and it's going to do its voodoo magic. But it's going to compare faces that are similar, select them, and it does an extraordinary job selecting faces and components that are similar. So definitely a big time saver. And now I can go in here, delete it, do what I have to do with the mesh. Next on the list is the snap together tool. And this tool becomes really useful when you have objects that you're trying to project or place to another object. A lot of times I do this with bolts and rivets where you want to place it, but maybe those faces are not perfectly perpendicular or straight, and you have to spend a lot of time rotating it, especially on curved surfaces. So here we have maybe these 3 bolts that we want to go ahead and snap to right here, this curved surface. So I'm just going to scale these down real quick. And now I'll go to my modify, and you'll see that we have this snap together tool. I'll go to the option box, and you want to make sure that you're move and rotate objects. If you don't have rotate on, you won't get the rotation, which is pretty important. So I'll go ahead and exit out of this, and you see that we get this crosshair. So I'll go ahead and select the back of this here, and it really doesn't matter that much as long as I'm getting the flat face, but I'm going to go ahead and put it right there on that vert, and then I'll basically select the face that I want to snap to, hit enter. I'll redo the command, select this guy here, and do the same thing, and select and click, and there it is. So that was pretty quick and painless and very precise. So definitely a great tool for placement purposes. The next tool is the shortcut that's buried under the multi-cut tool. I call this the knife tool. Not sure if that's the official name Maya gave it, but that's basically what it does. It'll basically cut on a plane. So I'm going to go ahead and just take this cylinder here, and I'm going to go ahead and isolate it. One of the uses that I actually use it for is getting 45-degree angles on a cylinder. So traditionally, if you want to do like a 45-degree on a cylinder, what you would do is go in here and then you'd have to grab verts and then rotate and kind of do this weird thing where your cylinder gets skewed, and then yeah, you would probably come back here and scale it back up, but it can get messy and it's not really that precise. I'm going to enable the multi-cut tool, and if you want to go ahead and enable it via the menus, it should be under mesh tools and multi-cut right here. So I'm going to enable this. So I'll go ahead and make a line here, and I'm going to be a little bit sloppy with it. You have the option to actually edit this line. So if you grab these points here, if we zoom in and we go from here to here, that should be a 45-degree angle. We're going to hit enter, and now we have a nice line right there that is cut. And what we can do from here is we can take this, we'll just detach these guys, double click, delete, and then we'll select this edge loop, we'll extrude, and we'll extrude there, and we have a nice 45-degree angle. And if we wanted to flatten this out, we could just scale inward. So pretty painless way to getting a 45-degree angle on a cylinder. All right, next on the list is the Convert Poly Edges to Curve tool. And this tool is really handy, especially when you want to extract a curve from an existing surface. So basically how these stitches were created is I duplicated the mesh, and then I drew edges, and then I extracted those edges, and I did a curve warp on that. So if you want to go ahead and see how I created those stitches exactly, you can check out the video right here. For this example, I want to go ahead and create a rope or a string around her thigh, and I want to go at an angle here, so I don't want to necessarily use any of the edges that I have here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this mesh, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it, and then make sure that it is duplicated, which it is. I'm going to isolate it. I'm going to get out my multi-cut tool, and I'm going to go ahead and jump here in perspective. I'm going to jump here in the front, and I'm pretty much just going to draw the angle that I want that rope to be. So maybe something like this. I'm going to hit enter. Now you see that I have that new edge loop. I'll go back here to perspective, double click this, and now I want to go ahead and extract the curve from that newly created edge. So I'll go to modify, convert, and then we want to do poly edges to curve. And I use the default settings there, and now we see that we have a curve from this mesh. And this could be very useful, maybe if I wanted to take another one here and loft it, and this is how I created these guys here, where basically I cut into a duplicate mesh and I got pretty much my path, and then with the path I lofted them together. And this is the next tool that I want to cover, which is the curve warp tool. So I'm going to go ahead and take this curve here, I'm going to isolate it, and there's our curve. All right, so I want to go ahead and create a cylinder here. So I'm going to go to Create, Polygon Primitives, and I want to go to the option box here. And I want to make sure that I have enough divisions for this thing to actually wrap around the shape. And I also want to make sure that this matches the setting within the deformer. So it really doesn't matter, but just be mindful of what this axis is. So I'll go to Create. There is our cylinder on the X axis. I'll shift click the curve, I'll go to Deform, and we want to go to Curve Warp, okay? So this is not going to line up right, and I'll bring up the settings here. So what we want to do, instead of auto aim, we want to make sure that it matches the axes which the cylinder was created, which is X. Now we get the right orientation. We can go in here and we can play with a number of settings. So the envelope is basically going to turn this on and off. But what we want to come here and do is bring down the scale a little bit. And then we want to go ahead and put up the length. So the length is going to clamp out at 2, but We can put a higher value, so I'm going to put in 10, and it will take that value, and then you could always go ahead and dial it back if you need it. So at this point, I would probably go in here and delete the history, clear out those caps, and then merge those verts. But now, if we bring our shape back, there is our rope or our belt wrapped around her leg. So the next tool I want to talk about is actually a brush. It's called the Relax brush. So here I went really quickly and kind of screwed up my topology. I just jiggled the verts around. And you could manually do this by hand. What the Relax tool is going to do is going to spread out your verts. You might still need to do a little bit of hand placement, but it's going to get you there a lot quicker. So this is what I mean. So I'm going to go here to Mesh Tools, and it's under Sculpting Tools, and it's called the Relax tool. So I'm going to select it. So it's actually a brush, and you middle mouse click left and right to change the size of it. But I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to get just a small radius here, and I'm going to go ahead and start painting. But you see what a good job it does of actually just relaxing those verts and spreading them out. And anytime you're doing facial topology or things that need even vertice spacing, this tool can save you a lot of time. And you can always go back and manually move them slightly, but this tool just helps you get there a lot quicker. So the last tool that I want to cover is actually a shortcut that's built into the Move tool itself, which allows you to move along the normals. And if you use 3D Studio Max, this is actually called the push modifier. So you might be familiar with that function. It actually does the same thing. So maybe for these laces, I'm going to come in here and isolate them. And if I wanted to give these a little bit thickness, scaling would not really work. So in this case, what I want to do is push along the normals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select all these verts here. I'm going to enable my Move tool. And if you actually pay attention on the left-hand corner, it's going to tell you, let me enable this again, but it says Control middle mouse drag to push along the normals. And that's exactly what we'd have to do to give thickness to an object like this. So if I do Control middle mouse click and drag, you see that I'm giving thickness to my object. And that's a shortcut that's built right into the Move tool. All right, folks, that's the end of the video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you learned a couple new tools that you never heard about. And let me know in the comments below what you thought about the video and suggestions for any things that you guys want me to cover in future episodes. So don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Make sure that you turn on notifications, and I will catch you next time.